I mean, I guess we all got to start somewhere. So if angry hand
Yeah.
jobs in the shower is where we start, then that's where we start. There's this guy who, like, I spent an hour talking about hand jobs, and it's this older couple, and this is the argument for the hour. He says, "You never want to have sex," and she's like, "I give you hand jobs in the shower," and he's like, "Yeah, but you're like rough with it. You got to be gentle and tickle the balls a little."
Hello, and welcome to the How Are You Really podcast. Today's topic is Beyond the Brave Face, Men's Sexual and Mental Wellness. I am your host, Dr. Faryal Mallick. I am a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and I am very pleased to welcome Miss Angela Skurtu. She is a dynamic professional who opens bedrooms doors for couples. She specializes in helping couples who are best friends transition their relationship from the friend zone to the sexy zone by normalizing conversations about sex. Angela is a licensed marriage therapist, a certified sex therapist, and a keynote speaker, as well as the author of 3 books, including her most recent, From Fuck No to Fuck Yes. She also hosts the Open Bedroom Doors YouTube channel and podcast. To stay connected with their events and adventures, you can submit a contact form at openbedroomdoors.com. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. And it's From Fuck No to Fuck Yes Sex.
Oh, I forgot that.
It's all right. I just want to
Right?
make sure they know. I mean, it's not just fuck yes to anything. It's sex.
Right. Thank you. That's so funny. I wonder how I missed that.
That's okay. Freudian slip, right?
I know exactly. I'm like, somehow skipped it. So I am so excited to talk about men's health and men's sexual wellness. Can you share your journey to becoming a marriage therapist and sex counselor? And how much you focus on men's sexual health in your practice?
Sure. There's 2 questions there. I will start with the men's question a lot. Actually, when people find me, it's usually men who find me first, which is not typical. Typically in the health and wellness space, it's women who are purchasing healthcare, but it is men who find me first. And they'll watch my YouTube videos. They'll like be following me from afar, kind of privately. And then there's 2 ways they come to me. One is they will wait patiently until their wife is like, "We need to see a therapist." And they'll be like,
Yeah.
"I know somebody." That's the one way. Or the other way is they try to talk directly and just say, "Hey, I think we need to see a sex therapist." And then their wives get terrified because they have no idea what that means. And then they're like, "No."
Yeah.
But then they simmer on it. They think about it. They watch some of my videos. And then eventually they all end up in my office.
Yeah.
And so men are my first clients. And then in terms of how I got into this field, I always answered religious trauma is how I got
Okay.
into the sexual health field.
Okay. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was raised in purity culture, which was really targeted towards women by the way of like, reducing, I guess they thought like if they could control us, then like they could, I don't know what they hoped for because, like it was very shame-based messages, never have sex before marriage. You're a terrible person, essentially. And it was directed towards women. But I think their goal was to help people wait towards marriage. But what they did unintentionally is create women who didn't want to have sex with their husbands, like any of them. Because once you have associated sex in your brain and body with something evil, negative, shameful, marriage doesn't like suddenly make this special thing like, "Oh, I'm sexual now. It's safe."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, it's unsafe in your mind and body. And men weren't targeted in this space. So like I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and I think men are a little more open sexually. And that's why it'll be men who will find me and he'll be like, "We should do this." And their women are like, "No," because they're still holding all that shame from growing up. And even if you didn't grow up in my purity culture, like that message is pervasive across the
Yes.
culture.
Yes, absolutely. And same in my culture, my religion. And I think this is such a common problem. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, that it's literally like sex is shameful, sex is sinful, And so then we're expected to all of a sudden have sex and it be normal and it be a good thing. And that doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
So what do you think is most challenging once you do get these couples in your office? What is the most challenging things for like men to open up and talk about their sexual health, their mental health?
I think for men, so they're very open talking about sex because that's what we gave them permission to do, right? So if you look at the cultures, this I think is cross cultures, not necessarily even focused on religion, but we gave men permission to be horny, angry, and competitive. Like winning, like those are their allotted feelings, and they were abused for any other feelings. Like we very intentionally abuse them in this society for having any of the other emotions. And then flip that for females. So females are not allowed to be angry, they're not allowed to be horny, and they're not allowed to be competitive. And we abuse women for those emotions. And then they grow up and they become, many of them become couples and they wonder why they can't talk to each other. So to answer your question in more depth, what I'm working with men is first, I just create a safe space for them to share the sexy stuff that they're interested in, they want. But then what I have to do to help them connect with their partners is open the door to their emotional sides, which
Yeah.
is scary as hell because, like many of them, like they have to be tough. They've been taught, you're not supposed to go vulnerable, but like to really be in an intimate relationship with a female partner, you have to be able to compliment her. Well, guess what? Compliments, for example, are vulnerable. Like to be able to say, I love you, I care about you, you mean something to me. Think of how vulnerable that is. And a lot of men have been taught that vulnerability is weakness, it is damaging, they've been abused out of it. And so a lot of what I start with males is just letting them know, hey, so you're a whole person. Like you had all the feelings.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry we abused you. Like I didn't personally, but you know what I mean? Like as a society, we abused you, but they were there
Right.
this whole time.
Yeah.
You've just kind of squashed them, put them down, or they funnel them into those three emotions essentially.
Yeah.
And so even when a man is coming to me saying that he's struggling with his sex life, the deeper emotions he's feeling is rejection,
Mhm.
abandonment,
Mhm.
loneliness. So I have
Mhm.
to start by teaching them that they have feelings. It's okay to have feelings. And then in the relationship, we have to create a safety for those feelings too, because his wife could be abusing him for it too.
Yeah.
Unintentionally. It's all
Yeah.
unintentional, by the way. It's the way culture
Yeah.
raises us.
Yeah. And so I bring this up because, and it might be because I'm a psychiatrist and you are a sex counselor, so it might be different when men are being more expressive to you. But with me, sometimes I have to push the men to be, okay, are you having any other issues? Especially if I started them on an antidepressant, I'm just like, are you having any sexual side effects? And they won't come up and say, hey, I'm having this problem. I just have to kind of push them and
Mhm.
ask them about how is their relationship, how is the intimacy. So I would love to learn about how you create a safe space where they're able to express those feelings and how can those be translated over to their other mental health providers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it helps that I automatically put the sex right up front in some way of like, hey, I'm a sex therapist, we're here to talk about that. But long before I was a couples therapist
Yeah,
first, you had
I
to get
saw
a
that.
license there before you could get certified as a sex
Mhm.
therapist. So during that time, what I would do is with every client, I would just say, hey, so I'm studying sexuality. This is a safe place to explore and bring stuff like that up if you ever want to. They never did it in the first session. It would be a trickle effect, right? So like I would just say, yeah, I would say it again, like I also have a little ADHD hyperactive, just so you know, that's why I'm always like all over the
You're
place.
totally fine.
But
It's really great. The
that
energy is
one
awesome.
that's right. No, but one of the positives of it is hyper focus. Like I could just hyper focus on a topic. So guess what I did with sessions? Every session I'd restate it like, hey, so sex is totally cool to talk about in here. I'm a person who's safe and I want to make sure that you're having a whole quality of life. And that includes your sex life. And I would just say that again and again and hyper focus, of course. And then eventually people would. Even like what's funny is I used to work with kids back then and their parents would be like, can we talk to you about like how to talk to them about sex and like puberty? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That's a sex topic. So that's one of the things I would do is just regularly, routinely say it. I'd have it in intake paperwork. I also have strategically placed things in the office here. I know I'm going off screen, but it's important. So like I have my BDSM bear. This is Barry Bonds. And this is Consent Cub and their friends and they hang out. So like just having fun stuff in the office is one
Mhm.
of the ways that I do it. And like I have a clitoris on my desk so everybody can see, just stuff. so that like they really see that it is a warm and welcome space. And I put a lot of playful stuff too, because sex is something that people are a little terrified by. So if it's a little bit humorous like that, like the bears. So yeah, I just create a safe space and I make a lot of jokes. Jokes are the way to kind of like cut the ice around
Right.
sex and sexuality. And men, they open up to that. That feels a little
Yeah.
safer to them.
Yeah. So, what do you think are the major sexual health problems that men are coming to you with? Like, what are their issues?
Well, so what's interesting, okay, the easiest answer would be erectile dysfunction, but it's not erectile dysfunction. It's actually loneliness and rejection. Erectile dysfunction is one of them, yes. So I want to talk about both of those, right? Because one of them is a sexual issue, but the other one is a deeper seated emotional issue that is
Mhm.
related to it. So for erectile dysfunction, yes, everybody ages, and there are different things that impact your ability to have an erection. One is just how people are taking care of themselves, because even young people are struggling with erectile dysfunction. So, smoking, drinking alcohol, doing any kind of drugs is going to impact erections. And I really need people to hear that. Like, you drinking and smoking is bad for penis health. It's just bad for penis health and health all around, right? And if you're not getting cardio, like health, like take care of your body, exercise, move. Like people who take better care of their body have better erections throughout their lives. People who don't won't, right? Like diabetes, for example, is something that really impacts people's erections. And I don't think we talk enough about diet, like how diabetes is impacting a male's sexual health. I had a friend who, as soon as he got diabetes, he couldn't get an erection to save his life. And it's because of health, right? Like you need a body that is in good working condition for your penis to be in good working condition. So there's basic healthcare that we're doing. And then as we age, there are differences, right? So like if you tickle a baby's like, ah, and then like they move quickly, right? But if
Mhm.
you tickle an old man, he might not, right? Like, so what happens is your nerve endings actually numb some over time. They're just not as like sensitive as they were when they're younger. So there's changes there. Then yeah, of course, just like any aging, the body breaks down. So like
Mhm.
some people's bodies are working better than others over time. And so I would say a lot of people do come to me about erectile issues. But going to the other piece, which is loneliness and rejection, the bigger sexual issue men are coming to me about is I don't know how to talk to my wife about this. I'm missing our sex life and I don't know what to do about it. Or I'm struggling with erectile dysfunction, but I don't even know how to get my wife interested in me to even potentially deal with this issue.
Mhm.
And so it's really like at a bigger issue, it's loneliness, abandonment, rejection, not knowing how to talk to their wife. I was just talking, actually, I did a couples retreat just this last weekend about this, where I was like, in the schools, they would separate us. The girls would go in one room and the boys would go in the other room and they teach us about puberty, but like we never brought them back together. We literally never taught them how to talk. They just stayed separate. And again, they
Mhm.
just expect us to figure this stuff out.
Mhm.
That's not how it works. You just
Yeah.
stay separate.
Yeah.
So these are all my like, I'm up in the air about all this stuff with sex because I just see these patterns repeat over and over again.
Yeah. So, you said about couples and their communication and the loneliness and rejection. So, is this loneliness and rejection over time, or are we talking within the marriage or just within the couple? Can you elaborate a little bit more on the loneliness and rejection piece of it?
Yes, it's over time. So what happens is since women have been kind of taught that sex is evil, bad, the women feel like they get a honeymoon period for about 2 years. And then sex starts to slow down, and men don't know how to talk to you about it. So then they hope it'll change. That's all they do. They hope first. They try this, they try that, they try maybe creating dates. And they, because they've been taught sex is their space, they see it as it's my job to fix that part. So they'll try and create dates. They'll try and talk about sex toys. They'll try and say, what if we do? Like they're coming up with things. They're initiating and they keep getting hit with rejection. And their wife isn't necessarily coming back with, well, what if we tried this or this? Their wife just, it's a yes or no. And then that's what leads to the rejection. So it starts with just rejection. And then over time, it's longer and longer periods of not having sex. So babies become involved in this too, right? So when they first start having a baby or trying to work for a baby, there's sex involved, right? Because you got to try. So then things seem to be okay. And he puts it in the back of his brain and it's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. We're having sex again. We'll have the baby. This is starting to build up. So it's like they justify it for a time, but sex still isn't as good as it once was. Then they have first baby. And then sex, of course, tanks because of hormones. Things change after the baby. They're tired. Like your whole life has changed. If you haven't had a baby, your whole life changed. Right. So then there's this new period right afterwards where like he's starting to struggle and he's again doesn't know how to talk to his wife about it. Maybe he tries this, maybe he tries that. And then eventually they decide to have a second baby because that's the most typical family structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, we're having sex again. Cool. All right, we're good. He's focused on that. And then after second baby, desire just tanks. Like she's just done. And that's when the deep loneliness starts. And usually about a year after that's when my first couple, like I have 3 different couple typical styles. And that's when the first types of couples come. It's about a year or 2 after second baby, because now they're done with the baby making, unless they're one of those big making. The average family is done by baby 2.
Yes.
You're a bigger family. I mean, you do you, whatever, right? Like there's some who just keep doing it. So they get distracted in that process. And I guess that helps them. Although I know one family that has like 5 kids and literally every time they got pregnant, they only had sex once. So they were coming and they're like, no, you would think we're having all this sex. Nope, we are just very fertile.
Yeah. I mean, I can, as you're saying it, I could think of a couple.
They're like, you know, these people, you know what happened. Yeah. And then, yeah, the loneliness just grows because again, he doesn't know how to talk to her. He doesn't know how to address the issue. She's not doing anything to make it better. And then what's interesting is on her side, she's lonely too, but for a different reason, because she's trying to emotionally connect. And they like he's kind of shut down to that. And so they're both just crossing paths. I don't know if this is a good visual.
Yeah. Hello. This podcast is being sponsored by FMP Mental Health Spa and Family Psychiatry. If you need help, please reach out to us via our website or email or call us. We are available in Tampa, Florida in person, as well as via telepsychiatry in the states of Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Virginia, and now Pennsylvania as well. So how do you get them to like talk more emotionally? I know for the women, it's going to be, okay, let's talk about sex and like kind of like that. But for men, it sounds like they need to open up more with other emotions. And so how do you get them to talk about other emotions?
Well, with the promise of sex, of course.
There you go. Great.
It's like, we're doing this to get you into the bed. So that's my carrot, right? The dangling. But no, I mean, I want people to have a good sex life. But I think it's funny when you come to sex therapy, you'll be surprised at how more of the conversation is in the stuff around. Like I always say sex therapy is life therapy. We will talk about sex. We do talk about how to like vamp up and have fun, flirt, be wild, and you know, whatever it is you want to be, right? But like a lot of it is what are the things getting in the way of that space? Like what are the ways we need to create like environments of warmth where you actually feel connected and close on a regular basis? Because what happens is they just start to distance essentially, and they stop really being like, I love to work with the best friends because they're at least good friends. That's easier for me because then it's just a little push, right? It's like, all right, you guys have good communication skills. You still like spending time with each other. You guys just need to talk about sex. So that's why those are my favorite couples, because I'm doing a lot less like conflict management and, you know, essentially fighting them to get along, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's still situations where I have to teach them how to talk to each other and hear each other out. I always say good friends make the best lovers and good lovers make the best friends, but like really it's a parallel path of working on both at the same time. So ladies, you're not getting a pass. We still have to talk about sex and sex therapy, but I find that like sessions kind of move through both, you know? So we'll talk about like, okay, the fight they had about their kids right before trying to have sex. That's a piece of it. Because if you're not on the same page in parenting, and then suddenly it's like, well, let's get in the bedroom. It's like, yeah. I'm not going to fuck you now.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Completely understand. And it's from the little things, right? Okay, you didn't take out the trash. I had to tell you 3 times. And so now I don't want to have sex with you.
Yeah, it could be like, do we need better work-life balance or partnership here, right? Exactly. So we look at all of the factors, but women are often wrong, which they don't like to hear. It's not like the idea that I need to be emotional to be sexual is not necessarily true. And the idea that you need to be sexual to be emotional is not true either. It's just how you were raised, really. It's how our society gave you permission to be. So you can be both. And what I do is I just basically do a balancing act of talking about both sex and emotions and helping them to talk more kindly and lovingly towards each other. I've noticed that, like, people can be critical, for example, or sexually critical. So, like, changing the way we ask for things. Some of what I'll do, like, so when I talked about creating an environment of warmth, I talk about, like, what are things that are like low level intimacy that you could do to just feel less like roommates and more like lovers, like maybe they're cuddling with each other. I have a video on YouTube called Naked Netflix, which is just about you sit naked and you watch Netflix together. That's like a warm environment situation and it's meant to be low pressure. Like, that's one of the things they need to do is create low pressure intimate situations where they're getting comfortable with each other again. And then, like, when you have like a relationship that stays warm, it becomes easier for it to get hot, so to speak.
That is a really good practical advice. Do you have like other like practical advice for couples and men in general? If, like, for instance, a woman is not open, their partner is not open to coming to speak with you, what can, like, what are you going to give advice to that man?
So it's funny, I have a lot of men that I work with individually first, where we just talk about what they're going through, what they're struggling with. And when I'm advising men, I do start teaching them a bit about like how to talk to their women. And, it's interesting. We should have been doing it as teenagers, right? Like, how do you talk to women, right? And so I'll guide them on ways to bring up the topic. When women do the thing where they're like, no, and they're terrified, which is not uncommon, I might guide them to say, hey, I get that it's kind of scary and I want to work with you and your timing, but this is important to me. I need us to talk about this at some point. So even if it's not right this moment, when you're ready, can you come talk to me about this so we can start addressing our sex life, because I'm very unhappy. And but that requires them to get vulnerable, right? Like, it's an emotionally vulnerable thing for them to do. And so it'll start with them just speaking with me and me validating the experience they're going through and helping them to feel, I guess I should say, like, loved as a therapist, right? Like, I'm here for you. I support you. Helping them feel seen. But then, like, planting those seeds of like, and now you got to talk to her. Maybe it's finding an article and saying, hey, I read this. It'd be good for us to, like, what do you think about this? Right. And if they but this is the thing, the guys who hint, so any guys listening, if you just hint, it's not going to give the direct message. At some point, you've got to sit her down and just say, hey, I'm really unhappy and I'm seeing a therapist about this. Like, that, I think, is a pretty powerful conversation to have, especially if they haven't shared that, like seeing a sex therapist, because I'm just trying to figure out what to do with our intimacy and I feel alone. And when he starts to have that conversation, it's not easy. It's scary for her. But like, I actually just created a video about this. So, like, it's like she's looking at this cliff, and she's a little terrified in her body. Like, what does it mean? And so her response of being scared is a natural response. And so I really try to coach them not to take that personally, right? Like, yep, she will be scared at first. And that's where, like, just like if you see somebody on a ledge, hopefully they're going to jump into water, not like off of a building. But, you just say, hey, when you are ready to jump with me, like, it's a very fun water. I want to swim with you. I want to do this with you in a way that we can do this together. I'm willing to match your pace and figure out our way back into intimacy, but I do need this to be happy in our relationship. I'm looking up at that cliff talking, because they need it. And the females need it too. It just sucks that we've shut them down to their own pleasure, essentially.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And shut your own pleasure too, right? Women are doing that without recognizing that, the pleasure is for them as well. So now I guess the other question is, so I have patients where one or the other partner tells me that, the sex life isn't great. And then when I say, hey, I know this great sex counselor, how about you talk to your partner and why don't you guys go see her? And the one partner that I'm speaking with will be very interested, but they'll take it home and probably gets rejected. And so it doesn't go anywhere. So how can I, like, word it better, support them better so that they are. One thing is that like either, right, men or women, when they bring it up to their psychiatrist, it's already a big thing that they brought it up to me, but now
Mhm.
taking it back to their partner is difficult. So how can I support?
And no, that's a great question. You got to think about how humans kind of warm to making a decision, anyways. I imagine you've looked at the stages of change at some point, right? Which is that initially people pre contemplate or contemplate for a while before they're ready to act. And actually, they see this in like, I was just looking at this marketing, the marketing funnels in terms of like
Mhm,
how people are
mhm,
buying. And so,
mhm,
like, people basically spin and spin on these topics. They kind of go through this loop until finally they're like, there's a trigger, and then they act. They're like, I'm buying.
mhm,
So if you can just think of yourself as one touch point in that spiral of
mhm,
marketing, like you're
mhm,
doing
mhm.
fine, letting them know. One way that I actually do it is so people will call me like when they're in that pre-contemplative space, or one of them really
Mhm.
wants to go, but the other one's not ready. And I'll just say, hey, just watch some of my YouTube videos, right? Like sometimes they just need to spin and listen to stuff and then they'll forget about me. And they'll go
Mhm.
off, live their lives somewhere else. But then like something will bring them back, and then they'll look up some more videos, or maybe they'll look at my website and they're like, no, I I recently was talking to a client, it's a male client. He said long before he ever saw me, he was just watching the videos and he thought to himself, oh, she can talk about anything. That's great, and so like that's what started. But he did it for months with
Yeah,
by himself without
yeah,
his wife knowing before he
yeah.
ever then said to his wife, hey, wife, I think we should do this. And then she had to do her version of it. And so I guess the point is as a reassurance, like have
Mhm.
the resources available. If you're referring them to a therapist that has some kind of content, I do think it helps
Yeah,
specifically for men. So my highest watchers are men, and it's a couple of reasons. One is it takes people a while to make a decision, but two, I think men need safe spaces to talk about sex, and they often don't feel safe publicly to do so. They don't want to look like a creeper. That's like one of their shames. Like, don't look like
yeah,
that
yeah,
guy,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so having videos or podcasts to watch or listen to online is one way that they can safely, privately learn about things, try and do things on their own for a little bit
yeah.
first, which is what I think a lot of us are do-it-yourselfers, right? Like do it myself a little bit, see what I can do from
Mhm.
learning. And then if I've still done this stuff and I still haven't figured it out, then they're like, fine, we'll go see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
therapist. But it
yeah.
just takes people a while. And to answer it in a bigger way, like I think globally we need to change our relationship with sex so people feel safer and more comfortable to seek help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 And that was going to be my next question. I'm going backwards. But,
Okay.
what about those men that are frustrated sexually and they'll maybe bring it up to their best friend or somebody in the family, or some friends are noticing that there's, something going on in the marriage or relationship? How can like the people around you, like your support system, your family, friends, bring that up to you that maybe you need to like look into maybe getting help with this?
I guess in the same way that you're doing it, right? Like, hey, you should seek a therapist. I know somebody. If you know somebody, that's great. I know plenty of friends, like, so I network a lot in my local community, and plenty of people are like, ooh, I know somebody, and they'll pass my card to someone. It's funny. It's like gossip is the greatest way for me to be known. It's like, I know some. But like, just tell people, I think also, like, a bigger question answer to that would be, like I think we need to normalize that it's okay to get help, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
everybody has problems. Everyone has
yeah.
sexual problems. Like I've been
Yes,
in
yes.
my sessions normalizing, like everybody goes through sexual problems at different times. In fact, my book is all about creative sexuality and teaching people that there's many ways to be intimate. And I think that one of the challenges people have is that okay, so I have an American sex box. I explained. So the American sex box is you kiss a little, you touch a little, maybe you go down on each other, maybe you don't, and then there's penetration. And one person orgasms, but maybe not. Like, that's not even required.
Yeah, yeah.
Both aren't required to orgasm, but that's the box that everybody repeats.
Hmm.
So as long as you do that, that's when it counts, right? And that's completely bogus. A sex act can be 69, like that's it, or a sex
Yeah,
act can be a sensual massage, or like I said, I think a sex act can be sitting around naked and watching Netflix or eating
yeah,
breakfast
yeah.
together. Like that can
Absolutely.
be an intimate act, right? And so And it doesn't have to be. That's where nudity on the side. It doesn't have to be intimate either. It can actually just be a free flowing, like, I'm just free in my body too. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's different ways to be intimate. But when sexual problems occur, what happens is if you can't fit into that American sex bot, then you're like fucked, and not in a
Mm-hmm.
good way,
Mm-hmm.
in the way
Mm-hmm.
that like there's nothing we can do. And
Mm-hmm.
so when people start to embrace creative sexuality, that you can be sexual in multiple ways, shapes, and forms. There's a variety. There's even levels. I talk about different like levels of intimacy and sexuality. Then when the sexual problems occur, nothing will get in your way because you have a variety of ways to be intimate. And that's what I think is the real problem is we've lost flexibility as sexual people. And then, so when those sex problems occur, it's like, oh, it's over. There's nothing we can
Yeah.
do. And it's like, actually, that's not true.
So that's the thing, right? I'm thinking about, as you were speaking, I'm thinking about just the stigma around it, and then within men themselves, their friends. Oh, I'm the loser that is not having good sex, and all my friends are, and so it makes it even more difficult for them to speak about it, or then their friends to kind of be like, "Hey, do this." So like you said, it's an overall culture, society, global change that we need to bring, where we're talking about sexual health, sexual problems, and everyone having them. Also, like I know you said that erectile dysfunction is probably the major one, and you said that there's medical reasons for it, but then there's also emotional reasons. Can you go a little bit into that so that people can understand what the difference is?
Yeah, so there's this time as men age where their erections don't just come like when the wind blows, right? So like when they're young and they have higher testosterone in their systems, like a bra can fall and they're like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a beautiful woman, right? Like, which is fine. But there comes a time as they age where they really need more stimulation, right? They need more direct stimulation. And so it's not that their wife is suddenly not pretty, it's that they lose some of their stimulation and they need actually more direct stimulation. They either need more touching, more sucking, more hand stuff. They need direct stimulation. And so, yeah, if you need direct stimulation and you're not getting it, like if your old way of being sexual didn't involve any of that, then like they're not getting their erections, then they get in their head,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know how to then communicate. Hey, I kind of need some work. I need warm up. I need romance. Men need
Mm-hmm.
romance too. Like
Yeah,
they need
yeah.
romance just like we do, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I need you to focus on me and make me feel good. Like maybe their whole sexual experience or style had been focusing on her, warming her up, getting her ready, and then okay, well, I have my erection. I'm good to go. That's
Mm-hmm.
great when your erections are just there, but as your
Yeah.
erections start to need more attention
Mm-hmm.
and connection, then that same flow of events isn't going to work. And so then they're in their head and their wife's like, what's going on? Is it me? Of course, women do that. We
Mm-hmm.
always make it, it's not about you, but we always make it about us. And so then
Yeah.
that gets him in his head and he gets the performance anxiety like, why can't I get an erection? And he may not
Yeah.
even know what he needs to ask for,
Yeah.
right? And as
Yeah.
soon as he starts getting in his head, like it's not sexy. So erections are the byproduct of doing hot things and being relaxed, like being
Mm-hmm.
very focused in erotic stimuli and relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
did you hear how I communicate? You're like, oh my gosh, it's not working. She's unhappy. Like it's very stressful. And when you get higher levels of cortisol and adrenaline in your system, erections are like,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you. I'm good. This isn't a safe
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's kind of a mix of what's going on in the relationship, what changes as he's getting older, and any sort of stress, right? So like if a guy is like even outside of that scenario, so that's like one profile for ED. But another one can be the guy is working crazy hard hours. He's just getting exhausted. Again, higher cortisol and adrenaline is just in his system, like surging through the body, and his penis, like if it's like not a safe environment, it's still like
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
again, erections come when we feel relaxed, when we're in the
Mm-hmm.
parasympathetic nervous system, and then we're aroused, like erotically aroused, not
Yeah.
stressfully or
Yeah.
erotically aroused.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that some men can't learn to be sexual through stress, because they can, but it's
Mm-hmm.
easier when you're younger and you have higher testosterone in your system.
Yeah.
As you get older, sorry, it's not so easy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so going back again a little bit. So now this might be, I need clarification on this because I've heard this again, maybe a cultural thing or whatever, when, guys have been masturbating for a really long time, then, nothing else stimulates the erection even when they're younger. What
Yeah.
is your say about that? And like, what do you do in that case? What do you recommend?
So you can definitely train yourself into any behavior, right? Like if you have trained yourself into a very specific way of being sexual without any variety, then yeah, you have something that works, it's easy, and that becomes like their go-to orgasm, right? To be in a partnered sexual experience, it's not going to be simple, easy, and quick like that. There's like effort, and yeah, you can kind of train yourself out of the moment. You can make it harder on yourself because you're so used to it being this one way that you don't know how to kind of slow down and be in your body and be present with the partner. When it comes to porn itself, I have no feelings one way or another. I think it's an it wasn't meant to be sex ed. I do have something about that. I get annoyed when people use porn for sex ed because it really is entertainment and is to get you off, but it wasn't meant for education. So when people are using it for education, because we don't talk about sex in any sort of educated way in this society,
Yeah,
then it can create unrealistic expectations. It definitely doesn't teach people how to talk to each other. And
yeah.
it doesn't actually show sex in a way like what it really looks like, right? Because what it really looks like is maybe you're kissing and maybe you're kind of feeling it, maybe you're not. Okay, let's try something. What do you think you want? Let's try that. Like there has to be a conversation back and forth. There's a warming with each other. One of you may be more interested in the other and has to slow down a little bit. One of them, or maybe you're like, but like even what we see in TV, for example, everybody's like just so hot and like ready to smash each other into rooms. That's not what it looks like. I mean, I would say that's a unicorn compared to what typically happens, which is where you kind of lay and hold bodies and start to warm with each other until you're finally in that space. And if porn is what you keep seeing as like the expectation that like, oh, they are just ready and pounding, guys, they have Viagra on porn sets. Like the reason they have erections is because they keep Viagra and Cialis like in the background, kind of like handing it out like appetizer cocktails. It's like because they have to. So even that, you can set yourself up for this unrealistic expectation that I should be rock hard salad every time I'm ready to be sexual. And the reality is no, you warm. Even guys warm. They need to build, they slow down. And so there's a lot of ways that these unrealistic expectations are creating harm and making it difficult for men to perform and to not know what their bodies naturally do or how they naturally work. And usually, what I'll do for those situations, so again, I don't put down porn because, whatever, it has its purpose and it's not going anywhere. But what I do encourage men to do sometimes is as a sort of like getting to know their body and slowing down the process. Maybe you limit porn, maybe you stop it for a while to just get used to what sex is like in real time and get used to like feeling your body's sensations. Because there are ways that men are masturbating to porn, but they are not present for it at all. Like there's a way they almost dissociate through that sexual experience. And you really, to have a good sex experience, need to be present with your body and learn how your body works in a partnered situation. And it's just a very different experience.
Do single men ever come to you with like, kind of like a porn addiction, masturbation addiction type thing? And how much of that do you see?
I mean, they come to me. They come to me talking about it.
Give me 1
I
second.
would say,
Get
since
lost
I
here.
promote a little more to those best friends who friend zoned each other, I get a little more men who are married and who then want to work with me eventually in the couple's perspective. But I have had men, like I do. And again, it's the same route. I try to get them to think of like, can you learn to masturbate? And like, if you are going to masturbate, can you sometimes do it without porn, just so you're learning what your body does and how it works, but without needing that stimuli? Because partnered sex just requires people to be more present, slow down, and you do have to relearn your body in this new context. And that's the challenge, right? Like if you expect your body to work the way it works with porn and partnered sex, yeah, that's not going to work out for you.
Yeah. And okay, so another thing, infidelity. So that is something that sometimes couples or like my patients that I'm seeing will talk to me about, and obviously their partner doesn't know or whatever. But like they feel like that sex is like the best sex and it's very passionate and it's just like like you said in the movies they just grab each other and kind of go and like that's what they experience in that. Usually what I say is because you're only seeing that person for that long and that's the only purpose of seeing them.
Yeah.
And so, if you left your marriage and like became partners with this person, what is the guarantee what's going to happen? But I want to kind of get your opinion on that because that's just my opinion and that's how I kind of talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, affair sex is awesome. Exactly what you said. It's out of the context of raising kids and responsibilities and managing those things. So it is. I mean, I can't lie and say it's not great sex because it is. It is. That's why they do it. Like, it's so funny. I work with a lot of infidelity cases. That's one of my books, Treating Infidelity. Um, and usually gosh, the story is typically that there was loneliness first. They're both married. They're usually both married, and they just start sharing and connecting with each other. They start a friendship, but then somebody kind of, like drops a little flirt, and the other person doesn't like stop it. They kind of lean in, and then they just start, crossing boundaries until, well, the affair starts, and they can be short or long depending on when spouse finds out. But yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of chaos in it. If you've like I've sat with a lot of those stories. So yes, the sex is hot, but then there's a lot of guilt and shame around it. There's a push and pull. They break up, but then they stay together, and like, I can't quit you. It's interesting, but it feels to a lot of people kind of like an addiction. And they know logically that it's not like a good relationship. That's why most people don't leave. Most people stay with their marriages. And it's more rare that people do leave and continue on to that next relationship. And by the way, I've seen those couples too, and they always have trust issues, and the sex does get worse because, of course, responsibilities, right? Like, I had one couple, they had just stopped having sex altogether. They had a baby. He felt just deep shame and guilt for all that he did and breaking up his family. So they were together, but they weren't like, I wouldn't say they were happily together.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
struggling. And that doesn't mean there can't be some affair. Everybody's like, well, you don't know like somebody will tell a story of like this happened. I'm like, I get it, but I'm in a lot of people's bedrooms. Most of the times when your relationship starts an affair, there's trust issues from the gate because you saw your partner lie and you know what they look like when they lie. So you always have the thought in your mind, if they could do this to them, they'll do this to me. And they do often. Not always, but often. And so in those marriages, when they do leave for the second marriage, there's often a lot of trust issues and some of that passion does die down because there's responsibilities. But it could be prevented. And this is where I always like, that's why I want to work with those best friends who are still like not cheating on each other. That's my hope. I do a lot of infidelity work though, because sex therapists, you're going to work with infidelity. That's my bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
But when I can catch people before that, what's really usually happening is there's been that chronic loneliness and rejection from the male for so long, or the female too. Like both of them feel it really. And then they become like, I wouldn't even say roommate, like they're roommates, but like I heard this said on some show recently. And he was like, we're not even roommates. It's like we're coworkers in a nuclear factory. They're there. They're not even in some kind of connection with each other, really, like they just are there. And that's when you're that lonely and you're just unhappy and you're like, is this marriage? Is this all there is? Typically what then happens is somebody dies. So there's always a serious something that changes their life, like a death of a parent, death of a child, death of somebody like that means something. And then about a year or two later, somebody cheats, because when you see death, it breathes new life into you and you realize I only have so much life to live. And that's when people are more willing to strike while the iron is hot and like take advantage of things, decide things. But if you think of it in terms of like unresolved grief, right? Like I'm grieving, I'm lost, I don't know who I am, I'm feeling kind of lost in this world. Then when they're in that space, then their paths just cross. And then that's how most common affairs occur. Not all of them, but quite like a high, like I had it so happen so many times. I wrote it into the book. I was like, okay, just so you know, this is what tends to happen. People think they're unique, but they're really not. There's so many patterns that just replay.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to stop by and ask you, how are you really doing? Also, how are we doing? Are you guys enjoying this topic? Please leave us comments about it. And also, if you have any pressing questions, please go ahead and leave those in the comments too. We will find an expert to come and speak about it. Finally, please subscribe to the channel, like our videos, share it with your friends, and follow us on Instagram. So I'm thinking of this one particular, and this is the woman that I was seeing, and her thing was that the sex with her husband was never as passionate
Mhm.
as this person that I don't know if she was still in the affair or not, but like, yeah.
Of course.
So, and in that case, again, I encouraged sex counseling but it didn't, I don't think it went there, and I'm not sure, they don't see me anymore. So I'm not sure how I think they were still with their husband, but how do you deal, like, what advice do you get? How do you work with that kind of couple where one partner is saying that it was never great to begin with?
Well, that one's a hard one. Like, my favorite clients are the ones who at least have honeymoon period. Because if they had a honeymoon period, then really all they need is to learn how to experiment, try new things. And that creativeness, like trying something new this year, like we're going to tie each other up and learn everything about tying each other up, is like enough to create some of that energy and spark from the beginning. And really, that's what in typical relationships where there was at least some good sex at some point, if you can get them trying different things and going on a sex adventure with each other, but like regular sex adventures, then those couples can feel that spark again, actually. Like, it's not the exact same, but like, it's this basically you're creating like those feelings of anxiety and excitement and dopamine. So, like, if you can create an adventure, then the new adventure reinvigorates their sex life and their excitement for each other. And so those are the best couples. In this situation where the sex was never good and they really didn't even have a honeymoon period, they'll divorce. Like, I mean, I'll just be honest. You sometimes people meet and connect because it was safe and
Yeah.
because that's what they needed at that time. I would not tell them they're going to divorce, though. By the way, I can say it here on this podcast because, like, I don't tell them, like, just so you know, you guys are going to divorce. But
Yeah.
they do end up divorcing at some point because you can't manufacture that passion either, right? So, like, if there's some energy and excitement that a couple had at some point, then yeah, there's things I can do to help you manufacture and create it because you had it at one point. So there's still like, that's the part that's like unique, but like whatever mix of pheromones and like personality connection chemistry that makes you guys do well can be redone and rebuilt and rebranded.
Yeah.
You just need some new fresh air in that relationship. But a couple who never really had good sex, it continued to be bad. They never had that honeymoon period, but they just kept going because it was safe. It was the safe choice at the time. You're not going to create it. You picked somebody because they were stable and maybe you needed that. Like, sometimes people were in abusive situations and they just needed somebody for peace. And peace is great. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to need and to do in marriage for a time. But then as you grow and you have that stability and you get into a place where you're like, I'm okay. Like, I've grown. I feel like it's like if you think of it like going from a drowning relationship, like I was in abuse and I could barely keep my head over water, but now I'm not like on the water anymore. Like, I'm on land and I feel safe and capable and I'm growing as a person. Then as you grow, you start to realize, I think I just needed this person to get on land. Like, they were the boat to get you out of the ocean to like stand on your 2 feet. But now
Mm-hmm.
that you can stand, you realize like, oh, I needed them for that time, but like really they aren't the best fit for me now that I've kind of become who I am. And those are always hard conversations, but we live long lives too. So this is my side note, but like, we used to die sooner and now we have to live very long lives together. And so sometimes you didn't pick the best person for yourself for your whole life at 20. You picked the best person at that time and that
Yeah.
was fine. But now you're in your 40s or 50s and you need somebody who's a little better fit.
Yeah. I've kind of brought up a couple of things in my like practice or experience. Now, what about you? Any memorable experience in your practice that kind of, I guess, highlights the importance of men's health and sexual health?
I just I always think of the story. So I wrote this in my book, but like, there's this guy who, like, I spent an hour talking about hand jobs, and it was just like this older couple, and this is the argument for the hour. He says, you never want to have sex. And she's like, I give you hand jobs in the shower. And he's like, yeah, but you're like rough with it. You got to be gentle and tickle the balls a little, you know? I'm like, and this was an hour on a Tuesday morning in my life. So sexual health is whole life health, and it boils down to being able to have good communication and connection. So like I worked with this couple for a while, love them, great people. But what they needed, like that fight is not how we want to talk about sex. We want to talk about it and we're like, hey, I appreciate that you're giving me hand jobs in the shower. Good form. And I would love it if we could like change that up a little bit. But there needs to be safety, right? So like to help them get out of that space, it didn't happen in that session by itself. Like they needed to de-escalate and then come back a session or two later. But they do need to, one, know that it's okay to be sexual people, and two, that like this is a negotiation and we've got to work together in a way that makes us both happy and feel healthy in this situation. So after the hand job shower fight, we talked a bit about, like how do we talk about and ask for things in a way that makes it more inviting and more soothing? And also, how do we create some safety? Like I use creative sexuality to just change, like, how do we become more open-minded about what sexuality can be? You guys are already open with this, hand job situation. So that's good. What other options are there? And outside of hand jobs, what are you guys doing to create connection and romance and closeness so that it doesn't feel like I'm just giving an angry hand job, but like I want to show you love. Like I want to touch your penis because I love you. And this is me showing love to a part of you.
Yeah.
And so to answer the bigger, broader question, it's not just about sex. It's about a whole relationship, and you're all whole people. So like having access to all of your emotions and being able to be vulnerable and share in kind and loving ways. And then when you can build that relationship from the ground up, then you can have that healthy sex life that you want. But I mean, I guess we all got to start somewhere. So if angry hand jobs in the shower is where we start, and that's where we start.
Yeah. This is an awesome story. I love it. So what is one message you hope that your listeners, especially men, take away from this conversation today?
That you're a whole person, and that you have all the emotions and all the feelings. And I know you're lonely. That's part of why men are lonely. And I hear your loneliness, and I want to help. I want to help you guys get out of that space. And one of the ways to get out of that loneliness is learning how to talk and share, and yes, get vulnerable, which you don't want to say and do. It is the key to your eventual sexual satisfaction. I'm here for you. If you want to see me, go to openbedroomdoors.com and submit a contact form. And also watch the show. It's coming out tomorrow on youtube.com/@openbedroomdoors. It's the Open Bedroom Doors show.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So I'm going to put your information, your podcast, and everything in the comments so that to make sure that everyone has it. Not so that we're not just saying it, it'll be on there. But my last question, I always like to ask this. How are you really doing?
I mean, I'm super excited. I've got the show coming out tomorrow, and I just put the most hilarious joke on there. There's a lady who is on it who basically went to Orgasm University, which I don't know if that's a real university, but wow. I put underneath that she graduated magna cum laude, and I'm just like tickled to death about that joke. I'm in the heart of my passion. Like I love this shit, and I'm happy every day that I get to do the weirdest thing ever. And it's super fun, and it's right where I should be.
Yeah, that is really amazing. I am so thankful that you came on my podcast. This was a really great talk, and I hope that people will take away lots of good things, especially men, specifically with emotions. I often am working with the men that, okay, let's get your emotions going. Where's the anger? Where's the other stuff? Where's what you're suppressing? Let's bring it out. I love that that's, even in men's sexual health, that emotional aspect is so important. So it was lovely speaking with you. Thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.